It's another edition of Time About the Movies, and today we're taking a look at the movies of July 17th, 1992. Three movies to look at today, so let's go ahead and get right into it. Let's start with the big new release of the weekend, a sequel to one of the last great comedies of the 1980s. That was, of course, Honey, I Shrunk the Kids, and now we have the sequel, which is appropriately titled Honey, I Blew Up the Kid. You know, because the first movie was called Honey, I Shrunk the Kids, and they made him little. Now it's Honey, I Blew Up the Kid, which makes him bigger now. Which I gotta say, for Disney, to call this Honey, I Blew Up the Kid, for them to do that, that's pretty funny when you think about it. But also very interesting how in 2 weeks we had two different movies that have Las Vegas climaxes at the end of it. Cool World had it there, and then we have it here in Honey, I Blew Up the Kid. I mean, okay, like I said, it makes sense that the sequel to this would be making the kid bigger than compared to the first movie where they made him little. But at the same time, you can definitely look at this movie and tell that it's a very underwhelming sequel. I mean, this is pretty much the same movie as the first film, except not as exciting, not as engaging, or not as intense as the first movie was, which made it such a great film that still holds up many years later. But this movie in particular, you knew that going in that this was, I kind of knew going in that this was going to be a much more family-friendly oriented sequel, since the first one was pretty heavy on the intense action going on. But again, that's what made it fun. It was a fun adventure film, and here, they basically just took the safest route possible, made it very kid-friendly, made it a lot more cuter, made it a lot more sillier and goofier, and I don't know, it just didn't work for me. It's not a bad movie at all, but it's definitely a step down from the first movie. There are definitely a lot more sillier and goofier moments here that even kids who are watching this movie are probably going to look at and it's like, you're going a little too safe on us, pal. But, I mean, to the movie's credit, there are moments in here that do still kind of hold up. I mean, I'll give the movie credit that there are a lot of fun things that make it worthwhile. For example, the animated opening that they have in this movie, where Wayne Szalinski's getting the shit smacked out of him through various things from the big baby. It's pretty funny. Like, it's one of the few moments in the film where it's just like, okay, that really got a good laugh out of me. And you also have the music of Bruce Broughton, who had done some work for Tiny Toon Adventures at the time, and some other shows and movies back then. But it's fun to listen to, and you know, for a movie the visuals in this still kind of hold up. The visual effects, I should say, they are still very impressive. Like, the third act in this movie where they go to Las Vegas alone, that's really fun to watch just for the visuals, and you can tell that the effort was being put in there. And really, it holds up a lot better than a lot of CG movies that we've gotten over 30 years later have held up. I mean, this is a movie that was made 30 years ago, and the effects in some of these scenes still hold up to this very day, which is very impressive for this film. I mean, I guess Honey, I Blew Up the Kid is a definite step down from the first movie, but there are those few brief moments of enjoyment that make it kind of okay to watch. It was just part of a really bad summer where a lot of what was coming out was either huge disappointments or just terrible movies, and this would be in the category of huge disappointments. It's fine for what it is, but don't go in there expecting another Honey, I Shrunk the Kids, because this is definitely not it. So that's my thoughts on Honey, I Blew Up the Kid. Let's go ahead and move on to the next movie that we have here, which is Melanie Griffith in A Stranger Among Us. Man, this movie was rough. I mean, for Sidney Lumet, a great director, to have this and then to follow it up with Guilty of Sin the following year, this was not a good time for him. And this was coming towards the end of his career as a director, and he just picked a bad script here. This is not a very good movie whatsoever. I mean, you can honestly see why right off the bat. It's a ripoff of Witness. Like, we had Unlawful Entry earlier in the summer, which was basically a ripoff of Pacific Heights, except that one was done much better than the previous movie. This movie was not. This is a movie that just really fails miserably to try to capture the same spirit of something like Witness. But it's nothing like that, and it just doesn't work, mostly because of Melanie Griffith. I mean, she's a great actress, but she can't play a role like this and try to be that, even though she's kind of being that same person that made her famous in the first place. Like, it's hard to play a tough as nails cop like this person is, and you really just don't get invested in the story whatsoever. You don't get invested with these Hasidic Jews, and it's kind of offensive to them the way they set this movie up. It's weird. Like, if I can look at a spoof of The Critic where they have Arnold Schwarzenegger as an undercover rabbi, and that makes more sense than anything in this movie. There's clearly a major problem here. So, but yeah, you can pretty much kind of predict everything that's going to happen. You can predict what the twist is going to be. She's going to fall in love with one of the people there, and it turns out that maybe he's the killer. And if you've seen these movies before, then you pretty much know how this is going to end. Like, it's really, you could literally predict what's going to happen 20 minutes into the movie, and once the crux of the plot comes in, you can automatically see where they're going to go from here. And really, there's nothing really more I can add to this that hasn't already been said about it. It's not a very good movie. It isn't shining through bad, but it's definitely not a good movie for Melanie Griffith in '92. She's not having a good streak so far. And it definitely, as you can just tell from that trailer, why. It just didn't look like anything but Diet Witness. That's A Stranger Among Us, so let's go ahead and move on to the last movie here. Yet another disaster that came out this weekend with some high-profile names. We got Jack Nicholson and Ellen Barkin in Bob Raffleson's Man Trouble. Of course, Bob Raffleson is best known for his work with Five Easy Pieces, The King of Marvin Gardens. We talked about one of his movies recently with Mountains of the Moon in '90. And he actually directed another Jack Nicholson bomb, which was The Postman Always Rings Twice, that came out over 10 years prior to this. And it wasn't because you not only had Raffleson as a director, you had Carol Eastman, who they both wrote and directed Five Easy Pieces. You also have Jack Nicholson, Ellen Barkin, a cast that also includes Harry Dean Stanton, Beverly D'Angelo, Michael McKean, Saul Rubinek, Veronica Cartwright. Just this ensemble cast here. And the stuff they're given is just not funny whatsoever. It's not a very good script whatsoever. It's a very bland, mediocre comedy that gives these really capable and talented actors nothing to do. There's nothing funny here. And it just feels like a comedy that's just not trying to actually be funny. It's just there to just be there. Cash in on the fact that we've got Nicholson and Barkin working together here, and it's just not working. It's just not working. It's just one of the most bizarre attempts to try to make something great that just doesn't work from the beginning. And Penta Pictures, by the way, is also the same people that gave us a delightful comedy, Folks, with Tom Selleck and Don Amici earlier in the year. So that should have been a warning sign right there that this company does not have real intentions to make any good movies. They just make crappy movies like this. And it's just not funny. It's not funny. It's not enjoyable on any level, shape, or form. It's a movie that's just not... It's just not a good movie. It's a movie that had a lot of ambition, had a lot of great people involved, had a big budget to work with, It didn't even make... What do I want to say here? It didn't even make a sixth of its budget back. This was a $30 million movie that only brought in $4 million and pulled it from theaters almost immediately. A $30 million budget, an $8 million payday for Jack Nicholson. Fox, who put this out, expected to recover their $8 million from that. And this movie, I doubt that this movie ever made its money back. Like, I really don't think this movie ever made its money back because nobody wanted to go see this movie for a good reason, because it's not a very funny movie. It's not enjoyable. It's very lackluster. It wastes so much talent on this cast, this director, this writer, who should know a lot better than to agree to this. Like, this is a bad movie. This is another really horrible movie that came out this weekend, and really, you should just avoid it. Avoid it like the plague, or in this case, avoid it like COVID. Maybe that should be my new slogan, because I used to say that about bad movies all the time. Avoid it like the plague. Avoid it like COVID. Like, that should be the new thing for it. And now watch me keep using avoid it like the plague in other episodes. But bottom line is, Man Trouble is a bad movie. Avoid it at all costs. And so on that note, we wrap up another edition of Time About the Movies. Next time we meet, we look at the movies of July 24th. Only two to look at, including Damon Wayans in Mo Money. And we also have Mom and Dad Save the World. So, two comedies to look at. We'll definitely delve into those next time. But until then, thank you for watching. And as always, if you want to see more videos like this, please hit the playlist on the next page. Check out the previous episode. And I'll see you guys tomorrow for another episode. So thank you for watching. I'll see you next time. And until then, as always, take care.